All right, Clay Travis with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, Outkick founder, Fox Sports, and he joins us now. What is up, Clay? How are you?
I'm doing well. How are y'all?
Doing great. Thanks a lot. We were discussing this yesterday because it's what we do on shows like this throughout the country. We like to rank coaches. And Lance was making the case, and I didn't wholeheartedly disagree, that if Bill Self won last night,
I did,
that Nick Saban is 1, Bill Self is 2 in the money sport coaches. Do you concur with that? Would you have someone else other than Bill Self?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting. Well, I'd probably put Jay Wright.
Well, that's who I argued for, yeah. And Dabo's got to be in there too. Got to be.
Yeah, well, but originally, Clay, I just said top 5.
Sorry, that you're saying the best college and the best basketball because, yeah, I mean, you could argue, football is so much bigger in the larger context that in terms of its impact, I don't know what the size of Villanova's athletic department is compared to, say, Clemson football, but I bet it's a tenth as big, if that, right? But in terms of, I think Jay Wright has won 2 national championships. He's been to 4 Final Fours, if I'm not mistaken. And if you quantify where Villanova ranks, I think Jay Wright has to be above Bill Self because Kansas is one of the 3 winningest basketball programs of all time. But for kind of a wild run back in 1985, most of Villanova basketball prior to Jay Wright has been nowhere near where he has them now.
I posed this to a couple of Carolina fans this morning, and I want to see how you would answer this if you could just make yourself a Carolina fan. I said you could have the exact first season you just had under Hubert, or you win the national championship, but you lost to Duke in the regular season finale, and you never played them in the tournament.
Oh, I think you go national championship. I understand the value of beating Coach K twice, and I do think for Hubert Davis that was worth years and years of job security for him, not to mention, obviously, making the run to the national title game. It stings to give up a 15-point halftime lead in the national championship game and to lose as they did. But to me, like in the grand scheme of things, if you had told UNC fans back in January you're going to make the Final Four, you're going to win the Final 2 against Coach K, like other than losing the national championship, this is one of the greatest years in the history of UNC.
I'm interested from your perspective. And Dan Wetzel writes this today. You and I and all of us have talked about it several times. There are guys sitting in federal prison for funneling basically players through Kansas. Sanctions are pending as a confetti falls last night, but basically what they're in prison for is no longer illegal in NCAA athletics after we've got NIL. How do you handle all that? How do you shuffle the deck chairs if you're those guys in federal prison? If you're a Kansas fan wondering if the shoe's going to drop and they're going to take this title away from us, where are you on all that stuff?
I would just wave it all off. I think in years into the future, the idea of the NCAA ever having investigated "quote unquote" improper benefits is going to disappear really quickly. Because when you've got guys who are going to be making millions of dollars playing college athletics, I think that's going to become a bigger issue. Now, what I do, I think it's going to become a moot issue. And I think it's unfortunate for those guys who ended up getting hit for crimes that are now, permissible. But we've been through this before. Bruce Pearl got, whatever it was, 4 years of a show cause for lying about a junior being at his house for a barbecue when that rule got, I think, repealed the next year because they said, it doesn't really make any sense that seniors can go off campus but juniors can't. So all of this stuff, to me, I've been making the argument for a long time. If there was no NCAA at all, right, if you just basically eliminated the NCAA, all the teams that are good would be the same teams that are good, right?
Right. They would.
So, yeah, right. If you create a bureaucracy which only basically exists to fund itself and it doesn't have any tangible impact on changing who the good teams are, then what is the point of the bureaucracy in the first place? That, to me, has always been the real essence of the question about the NCAA, right? Now, I don't care about paying players. if you want to argue, hey, we have to make sure that the guys who are going to get college scholarships are actually going to go to class, that they're actually capable of doing the work inside of the schools. All of those things, I think, given what the mission of a university is, let's remember, is to educate. I think all of those are valid questions, but the idea that you're not going to enjoy watching a sporting event because somebody has a nicer apartment or a nicer car than they would if they weren't getting paid for the sport. I mean, look, I've always been a capitalist. And the analogy I've used for years is if you were a poor chemistry major and you were on scholarship and, man, your family had no money and you barely had any money outside of what you were receiving to go to school, and you had a chemistry professor offer to let you come over to his house and clean up the yard and mow and do all this stuff on a regular basis, and at the end of that work, he gave you way more than you otherwise would have deserved. Let's say that job was worth $100 and he was regularly giving you $500, and every now and then he might even slip you $1,000 and just say, man, keep it going. And let's presume this chemistry professor had decent financial resources himself. That wouldn't be an improper benefit, first of all. And secondly, you might name your firstborn kid after that professor, right? Because of the influence that professor could have had on your life. And so I've always thought that it's crazy that people try to look at who's getting paid and who's not from a purely capitalistic perspective. Now, I'm more troubled in college athletics, honestly, by the idea of perpetual free agency. And I think that's going to create more issues in the future than the idea of being able to pay guys, right? So having unrestricted, basically free agency in college athletics combined with suddenly being able to pay people whatever you want, to me, that combination is going to create major issues in college athletics. There needs to be a balancing act between the two. If you sign with a school and if you're getting paid a lot of money, you're signing a contract, you're binding yourself potentially to stay there until you graduate, and then maybe you can become a free agent. But I think that's the balancing act where you have, this constant, perpetual free agency, I think is going to become a bigger and bigger mess for college athletics.
Clay Travis with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Two great locations, I-65, exit 304 in Coleman, exit 334 in Decatur, home to Cherokee, America's #1 selling camper brand, where financing is available. It is JohnstonRVCenter.com. And you wonder, Clay, what would become of the NCAA if your major schools just said, yeah, we're done with it. I mean, if the little schools want to keep it, and play under that, we're just going to play under a different umbrella. I don't, because really, if they don't have the NCAA, I think these big schools hold all the cards, honestly, with it, Clay, because imagine if just a handful of schools that included, say, Duke and North Carolina and Kansas said, yeah, we're done with the NCAA basketball tournament. We're going to go do our own thing. I mean, they would cease to exist. It's where they make all their money.
Well, I think what you're going to see in the next few months is the SEC and the Big Ten have created a big space between themselves and the rest of college athletics. I think that's what you're going to see. Basically ESPN has gone all in on the SEC. Their branding is, we care about the NFL, we care about the NBA, and we care about the SEC. And they may end up with some of the Big Ten, and I think they would like to, but basically ESPN is in bed with the SEC. And I think Fox is in bed with the Big Ten. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a result, those two brands are going to be on a different level than the Big 12, the ACC, or the Pac-12. And it's not only going to be, the big schools, as you put it. I think it's going to be like, hey, what do the SEC and the Big Ten want to do? Because I think they're going to hold all the cards going forward. And I mean, if the SEC and the Big Ten just decided, hey, at the end of the year, the top 4 Big Ten teams are going to play against the top 4 SEC teams, and we're going to crown a national champion based on that, right? Given the size of the brands and given the overall impact of those two values, I think that I don't think they're going to do that because I do think college football certainly benefits from, let's say, USC. But, man, I can see a world where USC and UCLA are in, honestly, the Big Ten or the SEC, and there's a couple of more schools that matter, and then we've created a really big gap between, let's say, the top 30 schools or the top 35 schools and everybody else playing college athletics.
Clay, earlier we had a conversation, would Kansas be appealing to the SEC, and it led to Vanderbilt football. And when that got brought up, if Nick Saban had taken over Vanderbilt football when he took over Alabama in 2007, Vanderbilt football would be where?
I think they'd be a lot better. But this goes to my point about athletics in general. You can't hide kids at Vanderbilt or Duke or Stanford or Northwestern, right? I would say those schools in particular have a different caliber of student and a different caliber of student-athlete requirement. And so I don't know that the kids that get into all the other SEC schools would be able to get into Vanderbilt, Stanford, Northwestern, Duke of that magnitude and be able to do the same kind of work. Remember, Vanderbilt only has, whatever it is, 6,000 students undergrad. So when you're talking about 100, or 85 scholarship football kids, that's not an insubstantial part of a 5,000, person student body. And by the way, I think you can throw Wake Forest in, which I think only has like 3,200 undergrads. There are certain schools that have been successful, even though they have incredibly high academics. I think Nick Saban could figure out how to win at Vanderbilt, but I don't think he could win at a higher than 8 or 9 games a season level. Now, it's also possible that instead of all those elite academic and athletic talents getting spread out to Northwestern, Stanford, Vanderbilt, Duke, Wake Forest, that ilk, it's also possible that Nick Saban started to win at Vanderbilt to such an extent that he got every AKA smart kid all over the country desperate to go to Vanderbilt, right? I mean, that is also a possibility, and that at some point he could have elevated to a level where they're contending for an SEC championship. But I think you're just starting off behind the proverbial ball that you're trying to push up. The Sisyphean task of trying to win, I think, is a lot different at Vanderbilt than it would be at Alabama, and I don't think it's any different at Stanford or Northwestern or the Dukes of the world. I think it's just a totally different environment in terms of the kids that you can recruit. And by the way, I also don't think you can run off a lot of guys, like Alabama and other schools do. I don't know that there's the same willingness to accept, hey, a kid comes in and he's going to transfer out immediately at Vanderbilt as there would be at other places too.
2 quick questions for you. First, on what you're talking about, did the Clay Travis Collective, give any money to 5-star commitment Nico Iamaleava coming from the West Coast to play at Tennessee? Are you in on that?
I'm not going to get into how much money I'm giving to. I'm rich. So, and there are. I mean, in all honesty, I think before all is said and done, I'm going to have kids that I'm giving money for at a variety of different schools, because there are a lot of kids out there that are fans of Outkick that I see that I've had relationships with, and I just want to see those kids be successful. But certainly, I want to see Tennessee compete at a high level. I mean, I'm a longtime University of Tennessee fan. I'm not, Jimmy Haslam. I don't have billions of dollars, but I've got plenty of millions now.
Yeah, plenty of millions now. I like that.
Hilarious.
He is not on the record for being part of the collective or getting a 5-star quarterback in the future to come in. And on a serious note here now, Tiger Woods is speaking live at Augusta right now, where I assume at some point, and he's just said he feels like he's going to play. Just the road that he's taken to be back playing this week. You're one of the sports voices in America. What do you think of Tiger Woods battling back from that near fatal accident now to where he's going to play the Masters?
I mean, it's amazing, right? Based on all the reports that came out, associated with his injury, I just think I think it's hard not to root for Tiger. That scene in 2019 when he walked up to 18, having won the Masters, is one of the great all-time golf experiences. I think it was at South Lake, if I'm remembering correctly, where he won for the first time, prior to the Masters, if I'm remembering that correctly.
East Lake,
yeah, sorry. I think South Lake's a high school
in Texas.
Dallas,
yep.
Texas area.
One's a golf course in Atlanta. You were close.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I think it's going to be remarkable. I'd like to see him make the cut. You guys, have you been to the Masters before?
Yeah.
Have you been to Augusta?
Yeah,
I have not.
I have not.
Yeah. So, well, the thing that I would say that surprised me the most, having been there, is how hilly it is. That doesn't necessarily come across as much on television. And so the physicality for a guy who's coming off of the leg injury that he had, to be walking that much on the course, and I know he's not carrying his clubs and everything else, but you're talking about what do you think, 7-8 miles that you're walking on the course during Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not to mention whatever work you may need to get in on the practice rounds and everything else. I would love to see him make the cut, but that seems to me to be a really optimistic argument to make. But I hope he plays, and certainly it is one of the great stories in sports.
Yeah, I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is that clubhouse is at the top of the hill, and a lot of the course, I mean, especially the back nine, number 10, you walk straight down that hill and spend the rest of the back nine walking back up it. So it is not easy, yeah.
It is way hillier than I got the perception of from watching it on television.
Right.
Hilly may be the wrong word, more rolling.
Elevation changes, however you want to say it.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference on the course that I think when you walk it, you see it and feel it differently than when you watch it on television.
All right, he is Clay Travis. Go follow him on Twitter at Clay Travis. Read him at Outkick and see him on Fox Sports and Clay and Buck. Clay, thank you for the time, man. We appreciate it as always.
Hey, appreciate y'all having me. Thanks a lot.
All right, man. Clay Travis with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.